All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have a legendary guest, Stephen Hodges. Stephen is an American drummer, composer, and percussionist who's toured, worked, and recorded with some of the most influential artists during those artists' most self-defining time. Artists like Tom Waits, Mavis Staples, and Mike Watt, just to name a few. Stephen is currently working with Mike Watt in a project called mssv. They just put out a new album called Human Reaction. If you listened last week, we talked to Mike Magetta, and this is going to be a continuation of that conversation and of that album. We're going to listen to a track, but before we do that, if you're in the Ohio area, mssv is playing at the Beachland Tavern October 7th. And my band, C Level, letter C dash Level, we are a high-energy funk-punk reggae rock group that takes 12-string acoustic guitars and runs them through Marshall amps. We are opening for mssv, and we are incredibly stoked and honored to be able to share the stage with some of our heroes. Ever since Coda, the bass player for my band, and I saw Mike Watt in 2011 on his third rock opera tour, we had the goal, we wanted to open for Watt. So every year, and now it's finally happening. So this is a huge deal for us. Now that that's out of the way, we're going to listen to a track. This is Say What You Gotta Say off Human Reaction, mssv. Say What You Gotta Say, mssv. The album is Human Reaction, available now on all streaming platforms. Big Ego Records. October 7th, the Beachland Tavern. Be there. If you're not in Ohio, mssv is doing 58 shows in 58 days, so chances are you can catch them somewhere near you as well. But I highly recommend the Cleveland, Ohio show because it's going to rock extra hard. Before we get to the conversation, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast and any of the podcast platforms, it helps me talk to cool guests like Stephen and share insight with you. And we get into it, man. Stephen dives into playing with Tom Waits, dives into how he wrote and composed with Tom Waits, dives into working with Watt, how like similar and different that is, working with Mavis Staples and Ben Harper and Bob Dylan. It's a loaded conversation, and it's a really insightful, cool one. One other thing to plug, October 19th, C Level is opening for Pacifier at the Grog Shop. And with that, that's everything. We hit it all. Here's my conversation with Stephen.
Sound bath kind of thing with the gongs and the bowls. And that's kind of a cool thing that people find, healing and refreshing.
Yeah.
So, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's super interesting. Like I want to put a pin in that for later because
Sure.
I got questions on that. But to start off, how did your grandmother influence your musical journey?
Oh my. Well, one grandmother probably thought that musicians were, akin to being like a hoodlum or something. But the other grandmother, my mom's mother, was from the era where all the kids learned to play the piano and take dancing lessons, right? So I guess in a way, my grandmother, was teaching my own mother some importance for music in people's lives. You got to remember, this is back before TV and stuff. So people used to use the piano or the guitar. They would entertain themselves, at home themselves. Somebody would learn how to play. It wasn't just they had radio, obviously, but TV wasn't even around yet,
Right.
Yeah.
So was there both around? Was a guitar and a piano around?
No, there wasn't really guitar around our family. That was, no, no, not really. Yeah.
Okay. And
so later.
And with like dancing, what type of dances were they like?
Well, I guess this would be more like, like social dancing.
Okay.
You learn to dance so you can dance with your girlfriend or your wife or your boyfriend or whatever. It wasn't quite that liberated back then, but still, yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, even
Yeah.
still at that age, man, if I knew some dance moves, like it probably would have helped later on.
I mean, learning how to dance the waltz never seemed to help, dance the popular dances, like the kids who could really get with the latest dances. But yeah, I still, it was fun, going to dance class. It was fun. Dancing is fun, what the heck, so whether it's super popular or not, that's not the question.
Right. And I guess just the kind of conceptualize feeling rhythm in a very like um concrete way, like to move to it.
Yeah, and and you're getting to be, close to other human, and that's okay, and there's supervision, or so it's kind of a building block of a sort. Yeah.
Who was Jane Stanley?
um Miss Stanley was our piano teacher. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I got it right.
I don't know where you got that one, man. That I Yeah.
I've been excited to talk with you, man. I've been doing some diving, getting ready.
Right on. Okay, yeah. Miss Stanley was the lady who, it's sort of funny too, because you get carted off to piano lessons, and nobody really explained. I mean, you do understand once you grow up in music and you find the kids whose parents really played music, and so those kids, they had an example of what music lessons could do for you. They lived with people who played music, and my mom loved music and she loved the piano, but she never quite practiced enough to just be able to do what she wanted to do, was just sit down and play songs. So it goes along with my theory of, it's hard to teach kids how to play music in a vacuum. You can send a kid to music lessons, but they don't really know what they're even there for, almost. It's like, if they see people playing in groups, that, oh, a piano plays with this and that, and oh, that does that and that. But if nobody tells you, well, if you come to practice drums with me, and you learn these things, you'll be able to do this, this, and this. Oh, okay. Now I got something to, like work towards, And I think sometimes when this may be different these days, but we just got kind of thrown into it. And luckily I liked it enough that it was okay to do, but I didn't really see what was my future, what was the possibility here, that wasn't really stated. And that's one thing when I teach people, I try to tell them about, hey, look, this can lead you to this and this and this, and so let's work on this now, and then prepare for the, what we, sort of put the carrot in front of them, like, here, go for this, dude, this is a good thing, right? So yeah.
No, I think it's important because you're right. Like when a kid's just because the parent knows and the teacher knows, like, oh, this is good building. You got dedication you're working
Yeah.
on, discipline, all these things. But as a kid, you're in this situation like, I really don't know what you're telling me. I don't know. Apparently I'm doing it wrong. Like, but like,
Yeah, there's so many things that it I mean, music encompasses so much, and for some people, it's a journey where they take to it instantly, and so they don't struggle as much. But then some people may take to it, but have to struggle a bit more, but they don't want to let go because they like what they're aiming towards. I might fit somewhere in some of it caught on, but some of it I had to struggle for it, so you had to kind of keep working and keep working. So it's like it isn't just like you're working on your music, because it's all your life, it's like your traumas, your abilities, your things that didn't go right, your learning disabilities, or your emotional state. You're working through a whole lot of things. I mean, and this is like that with anything, I'm sure, that you're studying, especially if you're trying to go forward with it. But we're specifically talking about music. People see you play and they think you're just a machine, cranking it out. But that's a human inside that body, and they're like, could be freaking out. They could have all sorts of things going on that they're trying to take control over in order to just perform this piece for you now. So there's like all different levels. You'll have some kids come in and they sit down and they just start playing, and it's like, holy crap, this kid plays like he's been studying for 6 months,
Yeah.
and he just sat down. And another one, it's going to take 6 months. It's like, I come in and it's this one kid, he doesn't even speak. I can't get him to speak to me. I can't get him to hold the sticks in any fashion. Pretty soon I'm just like, just play. I don't care how you hold the sticks. We'll worry about that later. Because he's making music. He's making music. Now, am I going to fucking stop him from making music just because his technique is for shit? Fuck technique. Music first. You can always get some technique. Technique is just a trial and error. Look at a YouTube, go to a drum lesson, stick with it. But if you can play some music, a lot of people get so hung up on the technique they don't want to play. They don't see what music is. So like, you gotta kind of let things kind of mature as they will. Can't always force, because if I start jumping up and down about the way you're holding the drumstick, then am I beating up on his ability to dream about music? I mean, what is this lesson about? Me forcing some grip on a kid, or music? And music is the ultimate thing we're working towards here. So yeah.
No, I think that's
Yeah.
it's interesting because not too many like musical instructors have. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty, but it seems like I've heard more horror stories about music instructors that weren't kind of aware of that fact, and
Right.
and I think that's incredibly important that now. That's at least with the like talking with you, like hearing teachers see the importance is the end thing. What are you doing? You want to say something with music? I'm not gonna like, I mean, there's no point to like, hey, hold your elbow out. It's gonna make it easier if you're doing it. When you come
Right.
back to me and you're tired and you're like, I don't know why I can't play this forever. Try it like this. That's when that technique, I mean, when you have
Right.
that,
Once there's a problem,
right,
yeah, then you can say, hey, what about this? It's like, and you don't need to shove it in their face like, yeah, so I was trying to tell you before. It's like, no, just be cool, because
yeah,
you don't, you're not trying to win the dozens with this student, whatever age he or she is. It's like, you're just trying to get them comfortable with music. I'm not trying to have an ego battle here. So, but I know it's like, and I mean, I don't know, I as I don't, yeah, I really, I'm not that in favor of seeing some drummer and say, oh, he holds his drumsticks exactly the way his drum teacher told them to hold the drumsticks.
right,
There's
yeah,
there's certain um, there's certain musculature things that it makes sense why they say hold the drumsticks like this, because the way the human body is shaped and formed. So yeah, there is science and there is logic behind it, but it isn't always apparent to everybody. And I got to say, music has to music has to trump, because what if this person actually has some disability and they're never going to have perfect drum technique, but they play music? Now, are you going to fucking throw them under the bus because they don't hold their sticks right, but somehow they play music? It's kind of like, you don't throw the Beatles under the bus because they don't read music, just that they happen to write a whole bunch of great songs and play well. So you don't, so there's, many roads lead to Rome.
Right, right. And it's I agree 100% with what you're saying. It doesn't matter if you're like how you're no one's going to be like, look at that stick technique. They're holding it
Right,
perfectly. They're like, it's the music that allures the emotion that you want to express,
right,
and the excitement that's what gets you into
right.
music. So now to kind of bring it back, so you're going to these
Sure.
piano lessons, right? And like, were you able to find a way to make it your own kind of as learning stuff?
Well, I'm like a first grader, so I'm pretty young. So I studied for a while, but I had a situation where um, on the weekends I'd end up, working with my dad around the house, because he was had a lot of he's an engineer, but he had a lot of skills for building things. So we're always like, working on building a front walk or a new fence or this or that. So at a point, I needed to stop practicing. I guess I was starting to stutter. I just, I needed to learn how to hang out with the boys. And so they finally, so the piano lessons finally dwindled away, and and I, and I still ended up working out with my dad on the weekends, but still, um, you know, get my social skills. I mean, if you really want to learn how to be in a band, you need social skills. Being good at music was only, because I did music in school. So, we all sat down and we read music and we listened to the director. But once you get out of school, it's all folk music, man. The game is up. And you have all these people's inadequacies and all these different things, right there at the surface. Everybody's, got their different skill levels and all this. And you really need more about, group manipulation and communication skills more than music skills once you get out of the school situation. I mean, now that I've been in bands, been in situations most of my life, I'm skilled at being with other people, and there's not a problem. But when you were used to things being organized and people listening and go to rehearsal letter A, and it's like, when people don't read music and they don't know anything about music per se, they're getting their music from a whole different place. And not that that's a bad thing, but when you came up in school, it can be kind of shocking. Like, what the fuck is this? This is mayhem,
Yeah.
at times, you know. So,
Y-
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's important because, like, when we think about really charismatic or songwriters or that bring you in, they
Hmm.
are very much themselves in their world, and they're asking or looking when you're in the band, looking for you to help get others into that image. If it's like a song, or if it's like a or not image but
Right.
narrative, right? So
Hmm.
everyone has to be able to buy into this group, but to be able to buy into the group, you got to buy into the guy, and the guy's got to be able to know, what I mean? There's a lot of like mini social interactions that are
It's crazy,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
that are super
Yeah.
important. Like, You know what I mean? Because if the drummer doesn't, if he wants to be in the metal band and they're in the folk duo, he's doing some crazy double. You're shooting the
Yeah,
thing
it's
in the
like,
foot.
excuse me, do you own any brushes? Do you need both of those bass drums for this song?
So I guess like okay, so you're working through piano and like hanging out with your dad and working on learning these social skills. There was I read or I can't remember here. I didn't catch the name, but there was a surf rock band that was somehow related to your family or a friend of the family that got you into playing drums, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think they might have been called the Baymen. I'm not sure, but yeah, Tim Boyer was like the youngest son of these people we called Uncle Max and Aunt Lois, which really weren't aunts or uncles.
Yeah.
But but yeah, Tim was a drummer, and I knew I wanted to play something, and it seemed, oh yeah, it's like got to hear his band practice, and they let me play a little bit on the drums. Like, oh, that's just kind of fun, give this a shot. So yeah, that was that was probably my most I don't know what it's, encouraging isn't the word, but inspiring or something that's like kind of tweaked my interest in the drums. Yeah, was Tim. Tim was always the natural too. He was a great surfer and everything. He was just one of these guys. You just sort of toss him in a situation and, you know, he'll figure something out. So it was kind of a multifaceted thing that kind of allured me, I guess, about that. Yeah.
So it kind of goes back to seeing that goal at the beginning of why you're here in a way.
Now
Like,
that you mention it, yeah, you see more of an outcome.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Okay, so you get the bite from Tim and then what's that look like? You get your own kit or are you bugging
Well,
Tim to play
then,
his?
okay, no. Tim lives far. He lives far enough away. No, that means that you start going to music class once a week in your elementary school,
Oh, okay, okay.
and then you get a paper out, and you save up half the money, and your parents pay the other half, and you buy your first snare drum, and I mean you know they didn't have a whole lot of good inexpensive drum sets. These days you can get a decent drum set for a few $100s that it's actually okay drum set. um, so so you didn't really, in a family like mine, you didn't really just go buy the whole drum set, or your parents didn't just buy you anything. It came from the depression. You earned part of it. So you just get a paper route, and then you keep adding to your so you get yourself a bass drum, and you have a snare drum, then you get a cymbal, then you maybe get a tom tom and a hi-hat, then you get a floor tom. Pretty soon you've got the whole drum set after a couple of years have passed. Yeah.
But I imagine like during the process of that and the learning of each piece as you're getting it, you kind of learn
Right.
how to do everything with what you have, and then everything else is just kind of like a extra after you get that
Yeah, I mean,
kick.
it I've seen it work where my best friend, his dad buys him a whole drum set, and he's playing the drums and singing lead, in about 2 weeks. So their everybody's got their own special learning curve. Some it's really quick, some it isn't. But no, it was okay. I was fine with the way that we put it together. Um, as far as not having it all at once. Um, yeah, and you do get more used to just adding it in at a time. I don't know. It's like simple enough.
So as you're getting this, like, did you like? did like playing, because I know you played in theater, right? And like
Yeah.
going back to those dance classes, like you would play in these dance classes. Were you playing in bands? Like to jump ahead, were you playing in bands before kind of diving into theater gigs and dance classes gigs, or was it?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So dance classes, that all started in say 1970 when was started college. Okay.
Mhm.
And I had been, uh, playing the timpani in the orchestra and all of that through junior high and excelled. I was having success with that and still working at the drum set at home. And then in high school, we could go into the stage band. We were playing like Duke Ellington or Count Basie kind of jazz. So that was you know, a great experience because I had always really loved jazz. Um, so through high school and all, um, and we had a band, so we would play gigs at local Army bases or Navy bases and stuff, play, popular songs of the day, instrumentals, not really having a singer in the band yet. Um, so, um, so I was starting to get my feet wet with just going and driving to places and setting up and playing gigs. And then lo and behold, there at the college, we get the opportunity to go into the dance studio one day. One of the drummers in the drum line had been at a party, and the head of the department, Judith Aston, had said, "Hey, why don't you guys come over and play?" So basically, we all went over to the dance side of the campus and played for the dancers. But over time, really, the only one who was still there was me, and I was actually the only one getting paid um, to do the work as well. So my ability and my getting along with Judith and everything, um, there I am. Uh, there's usually a concert for the dancers once or twice a year. So we sometimes needed to compose music for some of the dances. Um, and that's all part of creative arts. So that means that you're over there in the theater side. Now we're out of the dance room. Now we're in the big theater. So um, so that has me rubbing shoulders with the directors of the drama department. And so then there are certain things where they can use music. So we're composing music for different plays or like Thurber Carnival, but that had a score. So we read the score from, Library of Congress, but just different things, theater wise, as well as dance. Um, One time, different school, but we read the Library of Congress score for West Side Story, which was a great experience. And not very easy score either. Music is pretty involved, but yeah, I with the dancers, I mostly played conga drums for a lot of years in that room, and that was real melodious and easy to carry in and out. And that got me really used to listening to the sound, because the way they would say the counts, the teachers would learn how to say the counts in a way that helped guide the dancers through the moves. Well, they helped guide me as well. If you're listening, that can be helpful, right? And so, and this turned out to be really helpful once I started, making records with Tom Waits, who also would talk, sing, and kind of dance out parts for you, throw out an elbow where he wants an accent, so you're picking up information from a variety of different cues that he's sending out, or the dance teacher is sending out, so yeah, it's interesting work, and really, and yeah, who knows? I mean, I've done theater work. We did one that it was way after college with John C. Reilly up at the Actors Gang Studio, which was Exit the King, which turned out really well and was a really great experience. Going through all of that. It's so different. It's so different because nobody says a word except the actors. So when you play your music, you just play it into this completely quiet environment, and that's really special because I can just practically breathe on one little finger symbol, and that actually, everybody in the room can hear it, And so we're not in a bar situation or something where the musicians are trying to play over a certain amount of talking.
Right. And now you're assisting the talking almost.
Yeah. And so we're aiding and abetting the talking as it develops, or, whatever's needed. And that's just really special, to be, it's like when we used to play with the shows with Mavis. I mean, people would be quiet, so it was like they're really listening, and that's really nice. Yeah.
Well, I've always thought drummers have this kind of real-time composition of maybe not the whole performance that's been rehearsed, but the whole performance as a show, with bands or with wherever, the drummer's kind of setting the tempo for the people to react to when building it. So it's kind of like composing in real time. So I imagine all these or it is composing in real time, but I imagine all these different outlets to do that. It sounds like that, especially with how you brought up Tom Waits, being able to follow these different cues.
Right.
It sounds like all these aided in being able to handle any type of situation.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. I think, the more situations, that whole 10,000 hours, nobody says exactly how to use those 10,000 hours, but, but some of it is picking up cues from people, or hearing, conversation, or just watching the bodies, or any of that. So yeah, it all definitely, I was always kind of potentially improvisational. It doesn't, I'm not the one that bothers. That doesn't bother me. So, so that, combine that with, I'll listen to my best ability to what's going on here, and try to, we're all trying to find basically we're all trying to find solutions, right? I mean, it's kind of a rudimentary term to use for art, but bottom line is, we're trying to find answers to these questions, and sometimes the questions are coming up in real time. So hopefully, you wore your thinking cap, and you're going to be able, and of course, the more of you, those 10,000 hours, that it gets easier. You understand, you see situations, you hear it coming, or you hear it, and, you can, I mean, part of being a musician is that you can fix your mistakes quickly. If something does go a little wrong, you usually can get yourself on track pretty quickly. it's almost as much that as your expertise, is that you fix faux pas quickly, and that just comes from trial and error. You just and that's where we get get play in the bars, a lot of hours spent. I mean, back when I first started playing gigs, you could set your drums up and leave them there for practically months on end. The gigs you didn't, and you could be playing 5 or 6 nights in the same bar month after month. You know, this kind of thing is not very common these days. Maybe if you have a residency of playing one night the same or one day a month somewhere, things have changed that much. So, and and it's unfortunate because that was pretty cool for musicians to be able to work more.
Yeah.
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 No, that makes sense. Then, one, as a drummer, it's got to be to leave everything here. I'll get it later. That's awesome.
I know. It's like lot less carting crap around for one thing, but yeah, even up into the '80s with when I worked with James Harmon, we would work 5 or 6 nights a week in different local bars up and down the coast here, and then little by little, I think when club owners, or maybe there just got to be so many bands, I don't know, club owners started hearing about where you would have like 3 bands in one night, and I just never really liked that because I grew up setting up and playing all night. Like, if I'm going to set up, I don't want to be rushed in and rushed out and play one lousy set and be done. But things just really changed, clubs and also like the music changing. The music got more and more on the grid, and so the girls wanted to dance to music that was more polished, and so that's why the music club was 2/3 full, and the crowded bar with a loud DJ had girls in short skirts, lined up down the block waiting to get in,
Yeah.
because they wanted to dance to what they want to dance to, and certain music bands can't keep up with, and so it's not gonna they're going to be two separate worlds. And so the reggae girls or the Grateful Dead girls, yeah, they'll come in and they'll dance, but that's a certain segment of the society. In general, the girls want to dance to popular music, and most bands aren't popular music.
That's true too.
Yeah.
It's interesting because that kind of like the whole the persona of what people expect. Like I think there's a comfort for people that they're like, I want to hear this and it sounds just like how I know it. There's like maybe an unconscious comfort. Like, this is exactly what I expected. So this feels good.
No. Yeah.
And then but that's the beauty of the live performance and of the bands. Like, you don't know what you're gonna get. And maybe that's the because there is that sense of well, you know what, Dizzy Gillespie didn't kill it tonight, which I'm sure no one ever said, but you know what I mean. There's maybe that's part of that allure.
Exactly, and I mean, look, you just can't feed people a meal they don't like unless they're absolutely starving, so music is like food, and you just you cannot get a 18-year-old girl to like what to even have any frame of reference to what I may like or whatever, or
Right.
any, you know,
Yeah.
any, so, so we just have to kind of put up with that. Society has changed, you know, and, I mean, even me in the dance room, okay, when I first started, you know, playing the conga drums, you play with your hands mostly. People, you know, people are dancing up a storm and they're having a great time and they're sweating and going crazy. And then, okay, now it's later. It's in the 80s. It's early 80s. Punk rock has really hit. You know, I can make my hands bloody practically, and there's just an attitude of people looking at me like, yeah, what? Fuck off, you know. You know, it's like, so what? Yeah, you got your little conga drum there. What the fuck is that all about? You know, it's like it didn't matter what, you know. So the soul power that people understood, you know, 10 years, 15 years prior, it doesn't even exist anymore, you know. It, in at least in most of the youth, you know, or in at least the cross section I'm dealing with here in this dance class, you know. So, you know, tastes and awarenesses, they change, and it, you know, people, yeah, it doesn't always pay off, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think definitely an interesting point. Like, especially, I mean, being that's what you experienced. You know, what I mean, like, to like go from one thing to like everyone's loving this to no one's like even amusing it. Like, like,
Yeah. No, I know. It's like, it's that "Who Loves You, Baby," you know.
uh,
And honestly, really, what it really meant, all in all, was that the day of the accompanist in the dance class, at least in this environment, was changing into, they're just going to play records,
yeah,
because they're like in the disco. They're playing to recorded, manicured, beautiful music with all sorts of nuance and all of that. And so there you go. You know, it's, I'm sure there are places where there are human accompanists and everybody's okay with it, that's in a but that would be in a situation where the teachers and the whole community had created respect and appreciation for the accompaniment, you know.
yeah,
You know, things were happening kind of quickly, and, you know, this isn't something that some dance teacher can do anything about under my where I was. This was what's happening with the kids in their clubs, in their dance parties, in the clubs that they're going to or whatever, you know. And so there's no teacher that's going to be able to do anything about this right then. It's like nobody even knew it was happening almost, you know.
yeah,
The fact that I'm sitting there and dealing with it is like, I'm probably more aware of it than most, you know. I mean, you know, and then we used to, with Harmon, we used to go open for X or different bands, and, you know, their crowd would be throwing stuff at us or telling us we sound like their grandmother and all of this. And, you know, we would just play harder.
mm,
And usually we would win them over by the end of our set anyway. But, you know, it's like, you know, I mean, who would have thought that Donald Trump would win for president, you know?
right,
So, so things, just because things are the way they are in your house doesn't mean that's how they are in everybody's house, for sure. So,
right. I think
there'll be
like
some real surprises in this life, that's for sure.
for sure, for good and for worse, you
Yeah,
know. Hopefully
yeah,
more for good, but like, like that's, I think what you got like a super like interesting experience of seeing society change on both aspects like that, from being in a
Right.
band that's opening for like X, especially at that time when you're getting all the punkers who are developing their personality and developing their clique and their kind of
Yeah.
like dogmatic
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to see how like how expression and emotional conveyance can win overall is a really interesting like kind of trope to see play throughout. Like I guess
Yeah.
so as that's going on, is that when you're recording more with like Tom Waits and like in getting into recording endeavors and touring projects like that?
Yeah. That actually, the first recording with Tom, I think was like 82 or 83. And um, we had we had started the band with Harmon in the very, very end of 1979. And we would open for the Blasters or different groups at say Club 88. And yeah, so Tom had heard us at Club Lingerie. No, wait, go ahead. Cathay de Grand was downstairs, this horrible little basement. People could still smoke at that time too. So they're smoking up a storm in this basement. Oh my God. But and then I think he and Kathleen came to Madame Wong's West one time as well. But yeah, very early 80s. Just a call out of the blue, Tom had, because I had started using the large bass drum that she really liked, this 32-inch bass drum that I started using, and just this call out of the blue. I knew who he was, and I'd seen him there. I'd seen him a couple of places, but that was it. We hadn't spoken or anything, and so. Yeah, he called and we did one rehearsal session, and then Larry Taylor was there, but then everybody else who was there didn't return, and then we ended up at Sunset Sound, and Victor Feldman was on percussion, and Larry Taylor, of course, was on a bass, and I forget who else was all there. Oh yeah, Fred Tackett was on guitar. He's great. He was
Yeah.
great.
So like with the process, would Tom just kind of play songs for you guys and then you guys would go like, or
Right.
is that how it went?
We were kind of in this really fairly large room, and we were kind of all like one big oblong um oval, where we're kind of lining the edge of the room, and then there's gobos in between us. So I may have a set of drums here, and then go 10 feet to the left, there's some more gobo, then there's a whole section of marimbas, large and small marimbas, go around the room the other side, and then there's a spot for Larry Taylor on the bass. And so Tom used to carry around this Sony cassette deck. It was like one speaker, one microphone. You could record on it, or you could just listen. And so he would bring around his cassette, and he might play you some African drum part that he had, or some mambo band or something. Says, I don't want it exactly like this, but he's trying to kind of like get you into some sort of a flavor. It's like, okay, we're not doing that beat exactly, but we're kind of doing something kind of Latin, so you get you into the ballpark with something you're listening to, and then he might sing you something that is like, I don't know, it's just some sort of a little cadence, little cycle or something. And so you just kind of keep, he would make adjustments, and then he would sing it again. Then he maybe would go around the room again, talk to everybody. After he's been around the room a couple of times, it seemed like he was pretty much ready to track the song, Now that's Swordfish Trombones. Rain Dogs is similar, but what I found out with Rain Dogs was that he was singing all sorts of songs on all sorts of beats and rhythms that we were doing. So he wasn't even sure which song was going with which music yet. So he would try several songs on any given piece of music that we were developing. And it was a little teeny bit confusing. At first I didn't quite understand what was going on. Now, it was a little more easy to look back at it. It didn't really matter to us anyway which song was going to go. That was his personal thing anyway. But you're mildly flying in the dark because you don't know where exactly they're heading with their material, which is not a problem either. It's just, you don't really know until the record comes out where everything is going to land, basically.
That's kind of going on that comfort from improv, what we were talking about before. This is kind of like an ideal it's just, time for that skill set to shine a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So being aware of him a little bit, because that was before he was doing more like just kind of like the kind of jazz singer. Did you kind of expect that's where this project was going to go before that first rehearsal?
Well, I definitely was wondering, and I was even like, what's he going to sound like? I was so naive about it. Is he going to sound like Sting or something? And of course, I had no idea how far away from anybody's anything. I mean, he was basically going to start creating, just like they say, that music was very David Lynchian, with the reverb and the twangy guitar or what have you, or, very Waitsian. So I didn't realize we were kind of creating a prototype for him, but we were. And it was, I'm not even sure if I'm answering your question quite right yet, but it was like, he was gonna do blues of a sort. It's got a blues tinge to it. He definitely was not going to have any ride cymbal like he had. So he had the jazz thing, and he had inklings of all of the other things that we did as well. Sort of Africanish, sort of. But he was going to go way further into the instrumentation this time, and so there wasn't going to be any cymbals at all. No cymbals. No, none of the jazz thing. The jazz thing was done, and the subdivision that the cymbal usually does, the eighth note or the 16th or what have you on the hi-hat or the cymbal, that was going to be taken over by the marimba. And so you've got this really cool kind of plinky, boom, boom, resonant thing, but it's also melodic and rhythmic, but it's also not anywhere near sonically in a space where a cymbal would be way up there, where he wants all this sibilance for his voice. So when he says Rice Krispies, he wants every last syllable of that to be distinct. So he he really went into a whole other thing of getting the voice that much more present, um, and honoring it or glorifying or bringing it out, however you
Yeah.
want to put it. Yeah.
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 That's fascinating. Like, especially, and I imagine as a drummer, you're like, this is way more interesting of a gig than I thought. Like that's you know what I mean,
It
like
was
coming
so
into it.
crazy. Yeah. It was nuts, right? Life changing. And also, really at first, really uncomfortable, because, you take away the symbol and you think you're pretty independent, but, you take away one of the main things that you seem to play beats on all the time. It's like, ah, So, but so I in that moment, I had to like say, I'm going to have to just learn how to be uncomfortable here, because I am uncomfortable and I need to continue working here. So, and pretty soon my discomfort just went away anyway. But and then also we learned, Tom and I learned, um, that what he was really asking me for sometimes was 2 or 3 different drum parts recorded separately, because you could hardly put all these instruments or sonics or sounds, um, into one place at one time and play them all, in real time, and then actually be able to mix that and everything. So we learned that his ideas were a little more multi-track than we realized. And then luckily Larry was there, and Larry would say, I like it, but it seems like it needs a backbeat in there somewhere. And then silently I'm like, just thank God Larry spoke up, And so, because Larry was like the most longtime veterano of Tom's music. So he was special in many, many ways. So having him there as the voice of reason was a good, kind of a grounding thing for the whole situation. But yeah, we got I like where Tom was at, though, because it's like a roux, it's like how you make food that has really unique flavors, and it's like you develop slowly the profile of the flavors. And that's basically what Tom was doing. Was he was creating this flavor, and then Larry says, okay, he didn't call it that, but let's say Larry says, okay, the flavor's fine, but we need one spiky tone, we need one backbeat in there somewhere, to revolve around. And so between the two of them, we got a cool blending of things. And yeah, and I upon further study, I really really believe in music without symbols all the time. And one really good example would be the Velvet Underground, where she never plays cymbals ever, almost. I mean, really, almost never. There's a couple of things, but that was like later on in the and that was some specialized. But when you think about a band that doesn't have going on in some form all the time, that creates a real space for other things to happen. And I don't really think you would have had the Velvet Underground be as charming as they were if you'd had a drummer back there playing a regular drum kit with cymbals and all of that. So, she wasn't even always hitting like backbeats on a snare drum, so this is really, tom, very dark, but kind of keeping the drums really, really primal and out of the way. And there's a lot to be said for this, as far as the sound is concerned. So, and then Tom was definitely, he was definitely adhering to that whole thing. And I don't know whether he got it from them or just got it from just his own experience of dealing with cymbals and decided we're going to cut this out of the whole situation. I don't know, but it was eye opening for me, and I still use this a lot because a lot of situations, um, if I'm just playing locally, where I don't. It isn't so much for the money, but it's for just to get out and play music. There's different groups of people that I play with, blues and what have you, and it's like, the more dynamic and the more interesting your music is, the better the tips are. And so
True.
a lot of times I don't play the cymbal while the singer is singing. And then I bring it on when the soloist plays and take it away when the singer comes back, and and these are simple things, but these are major compositional additions and subtractions, and people pick up on this. And the fact that things get clearer and quieter and the voice is that much more present, and then the fact that, oh, here comes that cymbal again. That means there's this goes along with that. People start making connections whether they even know it or not, and 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 these classic accompaniment skills of playing quietly when the singer is singing these different things. I mean, there's a reason why that works. That's the reason why that is what it is, and not all bands, a lot of bands keep one noise floor level, doesn't matter who's doing what, they're all going to play at this certain level. And, that's fine. And certain music it sounds better that way. But in general, and especially in smaller, in smaller venues like bars and restaurants and parties and things like this, unless it's a full-on raging dance party, you need to play to the room, and you need to play like you're trying to suck people in. And the dynamics, if you just bludgeon them with volume, they're just going to start talking louder and almost ignore you more. I think, yeah. Anyway,
No, I think
yeah,
that's
yeah,
really wise and well said. And silence being the loudest dynamic, and I think the drummer
yeah.
is in complete control of.
We can absolutely, yeah, we can really be, and whether others are going to follow or not is you wait and see. But in general, once you've played with a group at once or twice and they get the idea, it's like, oh, this is a good idea, I like it, okay, we'll do this, yeah. um but yeah, it's funny because the more musical, classic accompaniment tricks that you pull on the people, the, there's a reason why they're responding, and, as far as their enthusiasm and as far as, walking up and putting some money in the tip jar, because, because you're tickling certain fancies of theirs that, they don't always get tickled.
Well, you set that expectation, and you deliver on that musical
Right.
narrative, and there's a resolve,
Yeah.
and there's like, and that's like expertise, like accompanied and working as a group, and
Yeah.
like I imagine so. Like working with Tom and working in groups like this, where you can really try out those things that aren't typically what's working in a bar. That's a really cool way to learn how some of those skills work in different
Yeah.
in the greater scheme of things. Before leaving the subject of Tom, my drummer wanted me to ask you, because he's a big Tom Waits guy. He was like,
Right on.
Tom Waits has a bunch of percussion that he brings and makes. Did he play that, or did he show that to you and you play that?
Um, let me see. He he may be making stuff, but he has stuff that looks homemade for
Okay.
sure. That and he does, you know, he is buddies with local artisans and welders and all sorts of things. So, but yeah, he you know, when we first started, we were both interested in like the idea of found instruments or just percussion, you know, unique sounding percussion instruments. And we would try, you know, banging on this. We were messing up our hands trying, you know, things. And I guess the one thing you learn is not all metal is created equal. You know, some metal just sounds not good at all, and in some pieces are just astoundingly beautiful. But yeah, Tom got and so found instruments can be really cool, but there are instruments that they've been making for centuries now that are just off the hook ridiculously cool. And it may seem simple, but number one is a cowbell. A good cowbell is like, it's otherworldly how powerful of an instrument that can be, and in the right setting, you know. And there's large ones, there's deep sounding, there's high pitched ones, there's all over the map, you know. Um, Certain cymbals that sound like a whip crack, you know, and that, you know, one instrument that he liked was it had this water phone. It looks like a a dumbek turned upside down, so the skinny part is going up and the wide part is like on the table, and then it has these pieces of you know, like 1/8 inch, like straw, like long brass straws that have been welded to the bottom of this thing so they stick up. Oh god, it's hard. Anyway, you fill this thing with water,
Yeah.
and then you can play these brass straws that are sticking up with a bow, or you can hit them with a mallet. And because of the water, you get these, you know, you can the tones can bend because the water moving in, you know, can move inside the instrument.
Like that
You know,
boing,
or different pieces. I'm sorry.
like boom, like that type of like
Yeah,
when you're
yeah, yeah,
moving the
exactly. Yeah, that kind of bending sound. Exactly. Yeah. Um, or you know, I mean, just certain piece of pipe. You know, he has different things that are kind of like sculptures. And oh, Peter Engelhook or so, Peter. Yeah, this one guy, Peter Engelhook, was famous for making all these percussion instruments out of metal. You know, they almost look like tribe. Some of them can kind of look like a tribal mask or some oddball things, but you can hit them with different things, or, you know, stroke them with a, a cello bow or a variety of things. Because these metal pieces, they can sound like it. You know, it could just be like a metal box like this Rico from Brazil, it's like sort of like this metal box with some springs on it. But when you put a microphone on it, it sounds like a gigantic warehouse. It sounds like a 300 by 3,000 foot, concrete warehouse building, So you get these resonances that are just insane out of some of these different percussion instruments, or some really striking accent tones, like a cowbell, that you're not going to get from any other instrument on the planet, So yeah, I don't know what all Tom has, but he's not opposed to taking a maraca and holding it right up next to the microphone, turn the microphone up as loud as possible, and shake the fucking maraca. It sounds, distorted and crazy, but it works for the composition, rattling and shaking things. That's ancient history for ceremonial, because the rattling or the rattling of bones or scraping of things, that's like it ignites. Apparently, it ignites the spiritual centers in the human body. And that's why these instruments or these sounds are, so appealing to us these days, and that they're ancient. They're ancient like beer is ancient. When the water was bad and they made beer because that was how they could make the water not kill everybody, So you wonder why people like beer. Well, beer has been around a fucking long time. That's why. And before they could even, because they were polluting all the water, because everybody was just peeing in the rivers, they figured out that they could make water not kill you if they turned it into beer. So this is back in the dark ages practically. So you wonder why people like beer. It's been around for freaking ever. It's in the culture so much longer than anybody has any idea of. And similarly, scraping and scratching, or maracas or rattle sounds, all of these sounds have been associated with spiritual things. So it's no wonder that they still get used in music in certain fashions these days, let alone Tom putting it all to the microphone and giving you firsthand more maraca than you ever wanted in your whole life, on certain records. Yeah.
That's well, and they kind of unpin what we started talking about with like sound baths and gongs and stuff like that. I imagine that is coming from a lot of that same like ancestral like tone centers in our brains that we resonate.
Yeah, I think it allows people to, because of the way the vibration, especially with the gongs and the singing bowls, they make the room vibrate, so then the people are kind of vibrating along with this, because the air is being moved in a way that only these instruments can do, and it allows people to kind of just be part of that sound. And so that's like a mindfulness, and they're asked to say, do your best to set an intention for what you're hoping for as you participate in this sound bath. And so, coupled along with, we're already thinking about positive things and healing things, this sound is like tailor-made to kind of give you like this experience you usually don't have, because who turns on their radio and hears 45 minutes of gong? You don't ever hear a gong. Hardly. It's almost a joke if you hear a gong. But in this situation, yeah, it's a whole other deal. Um, and the way the gong presents itself as these bursts and these sort of events, of it's you get the gong moving and you can hear it, but you pressure it a little bit more and it starts speaking a little bit more, and it sort of sends out, these sort of waves of, stratospheres of sounds and what have you. And so, yeah, it's really they're tailor-made to be helpful if you use it in that way. Yeah, it's gotten more popular. These things are more, people are more aware. Oh, sound baths, yeah, blah blah blah. I did that. Oh, really? Okay. You expect to hear, huh? What are you talking about? But look, back when I was first studying yoga, nobody hardly heard of it, or Pilates. Now Pilates is in even gangsters own Pilates studios. They don't even have to give a shit about anybody. People know that they could make some money if they own, it's gotten that popular, right? And our sound bath, that whole idea, cat's out of the bag. People are looking for things. Times are tough enough that, solutions. People need solutions for things. So, something as simple as a sound bath could be really important for certain people. Yeah.
Well, no, definitely. And it's like the gong itself is a really interesting instrument with how many overtones and we had a buddy of mine recorded a gong record at this art gallery I work at. And
okay.
I'll send it to you. It's really a fascinating record because he organized it as it's the whole birth of the universe. So it's one long track. It's really fascinating. But what was blowing my mind about the process of it was about the overtones and how they had this thing mic'd up to try to capture what they were hearing in the room. And that's an instrument you don't really think. You don't really think there's more than just dun, but there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like cymbals. They seem like they're one thing, but they're like a few thousand things, all kind of going on at once in a way. Yeah.
I wanted to man, I really appreciate your time. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I got a lot more questions about a lot of other projects you worked on. But right, well, I wanted to ask you a little bit about working with Watt and the MSSV record.
Sure.
So, you worked with Watt on his first rock opera. How did going from working with Mavis and where did you meet Mike Watt, and how did you get involved with the first rock opera?
I know it is. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure how I met Mike. I almost think that he just kind of called me out of the blue, because he knew that I had worked with Tom and that I had worked in theater, and he knew that his music was heading in that direction, so it was, it was kind of him taking a chance because, those punk rockers can be pretty territorial. They get pretty adamant about, who's okay and who's not okay, and I didn't necessarily find immediate acceptance. With Mike and with Nels I did, but out in public on the road with Watt, some of it was good and some of it was I still hadn't been around their punk rock world long enough to be accepted in their eyes, which I'm not that big on the whole territorial, like Stones versus the Beatles or Stooges versus whatever, I just would prefer to like all of them and not have to have to fight it out.
Yeah.
But no, but Mike called and we talked about, about some of the similar stuff that you and I have spoken of today. And then, I'd had friends who said, I think you and Mike Watt ought to work together, so here goes, here comes that. And, I don't know, I knew of Nels Cline's brother, Alex, because he and I were both accompanying dancers, but he was up in LA and I was down here in Long Beach. So dance teachers had told me about Alex Cline since the 70s,
Yeah.
And so here I come around in 1997 or 96, whenever we made the record. I still really didn't know that they were twins. Alex and Nels were brothers. But anyway, Nels is a great guy and fantastic musician, of course. I don't know, we just got in and just started, rehearsing. And Mike would have us, play like certain sections over and over and over. And here again, I don't know where we're heading with all of this, but lo and behold, then he finally starts trimming it down to where it becomes, in composition form. And I say, oh, okay, so this thing that we did for 2 hours yesterday, we're going to do 12 bars of it in this song today, and that was what that was for, to get that together. Okay. So,
so his approach was a little more, was it similar to Tom's? Like, here's this idea I have, like, or was he showing you like a full song and like trying
No, he wasn't showing anything at first. He wasn't the dancer like Tom was, but we did get to run over, I guess basically he just had us keep working over what he felt like the main body of the song was going to be. And so once we got that basic feeling together, then he starts bringing in, okay, but then we're going to break here and we're going to put this accent here and so then we really start like filling in the composition. It's like, okay, now we're building a song. First off, we're building a groove. We're building the essence, but we don't have any eyes. We don't have a mouth. We don't have a nose. We just have a body so far. So then we start building the rest of the body, and that's kind of how each song grew, and that first opera is really interesting because it has a blend of things that really have always been important and still are important in Watt's life, which is the Navy. The idea that his dad was in the Navy, he was a chief, which is the highest non-commissioned officer. So when you live in the housing with all of the other kids, the Navy housing, and all the other kids are the sons or daughters of Navy chiefs, what you're living with is the blue collar segment of the Navy. You're not living with the officers that don't get their uniforms dirty. You're living with the guys who run the freaking Navy. Okay. Yeah. So so you're with some pretty earthy people. There's real down to earthness going on here. So this is where Mike Watt comes from. This is where the Minutemen come from. They were all the sons of Navy chiefs. So they're all blue collar high. They're all the highest of the blue collar of the Navy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And,
I think that speaks a lot about who he is now, and like,
yeah.
definitely,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, definitely that record is a very emotional journey. I think just listening to it. I mean, not that Watt's other stuff isn't, but definitely that is like the
Oh,
most.
no, it's a big deal. It's a
Yeah.
very big deal. I mean, and so it's definitely a really, really deep thing because not only his dad, but there's D. Boone, who is such a buddy to him
Yeah.
and such a meaningful guy in that whole. I mean, look, for people who were of the age that, like however old you are when you get hit by your first music, what is it, 13, 12, 15,
Yeah.
young people, basically, I guess, right? For me, it was like Motown and Jimi Hendrix or something. But for certain people, and the Beatles, but for certain people, Mike Watt might as well be Mick Jagger or Paul McCartney, Roger Daltrey, because that's how popular for that era of kid that gets inundated in music. When he gets first bitten, the ones that were bitten by the Minutemen, which there were plenty, Watt might as well fucking be Paul McCartney because people love him that much. And it goes so deep for them. And I see it all the time. And I don't know. That's all I got to say.
No, I think
really. But I mean, it's a big thing for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. No, and
Yeah.
I definitely, I mean, I wasn't of the time, but me and my bass player, since we started playing, we got that Minutemen bite too. You know what I mean? Like, Watt's a
Sure.
big figure for us musically, and like, but
Yeah.
that shows that the importance of that moment when you're struck by someone who's doing their thing, and shows that not only are they doing it with like expertise and like conviction, but you can do it too. That's a whole nother level of
You
acceptance.
see yourself there, and you go, okay, I want to give that. That seems like a good thing. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's why this record's so like, you're like on so many like big moment records for so many artists, and like that's fascinating to like be a part of that. But what? Okay, before I lose and just get excited, how does like so this initial like kind of working with Watt on this first rock opera? How do you see that same kind of process with MSSV?
Well, well, I guess our methods are, I mean, I guess learning a song or learning music is just pretty much a similar method of a sort. Watt went about it in bits and pieces, and then put the songs together for us. With Baguetta, he pretty much writes the music, and then unleashes it on us in a demo form to where we can. I get him to. I make him chart out my parts because sometimes his playing isn't as accurate, and then I'm sitting there for hours, charting this stuff out, and then it's not quite accurate anyway. So I was like, in our method of learning, finally, I said, okay, look, you send me the chart. You know how to write. I don't want to be the one writing it all out and still not having it quite right anyway, because your demo is a little off here or there, whatever. So, but no, we have. I will say that it's similar in a sense that in a lot of the music I have played, things don't flip around as quickly. You don't go from one section to another section and then back to that other section as quickly. There aren't as many sections. There's usually longer periods of you stay in one certain beat, one certain vibe, right? So learning how to get into this more sort of like compartmentalized, you have your verse, your chorus, your bridge, and you're moving back and forth from parts pretty quickly with some of this music. It's not exactly something I can't do, but it's not my first forte. So that I do struggle with, I'm the one who has to work a little bit harder because I don't really come from music like that. That was music that kind of came around after my initial indoctrination to music. It keeps, but it really keeps me on my toes. I'm not complaining. It's just, you have to really be on your toes with this shit.
Yeah, well, that makes, like, listening through and watching you guys. I saw you guys last time at the Beachland,
Okay.
and seeing that happen. Like, I can see where that's like where the challenge is within that, and like,
Yeah.
I guess so. Kind of like embark on that. Like, so like when you're backing up someone like Mavis Staples, and because you played with her for like 13, 14 years, right?
13 years, I think it was. Yeah.
And like, I'd imagine that involves that same type of listening, but like how you're saying, it's not as big as a transition from one huge thing to the next, more of that, like bringing up the dynamics, right? Or down the dynamics.
Her stuff isn't as quirky. It does have the verses and the choruses, but with this Watt stuff or with Baguetta, yeah, you've got tempos and you've got these, kooky beats and stuff sometimes. But yeah, Mavis, she's classic, basic Americana gospel R&B, format as far as her verses and choruses go. So she's somewhere in between. But her music is pretty simple, really.
So like, okay, the question I had with working with her is, were you involved when Ben Harper and her were writing tunes?
Yeah, we made that record with Ben.
Okay, so I've been a huge fan of his playing and songwriting. I just like kind of like on that end of things. What's that look like? Are they coming to you with these songs already written, or are they working with you to write these songs? Maybe
Right. Ben was the composer of all of that material, and so he was amazing too. I mean, he's mind blowing. I mean, he moved my head around big time. I mean, yeah. I mean, even on like this one song that we did with her. It's just one of those things where there's a 4-count break and he sings something like a pickup to bring it back in. And I swear to God, man, what he's saying, it's one of those things. It kind of, it's kind of changed my life. It just hit me so strong, like it's like soul power. It's like something, it's like electricity, and like completely unexpected. Not that I don't expect him to be great or whatever, of course, but I mean, just like the way he said, made this sound. I don't even know if it was a word even, and I'm just like have like these freaking electronic explosions going on inside my body. Who the fuck would know, right? Yeah, exactly, right. And so yeah, we got to play. He would, when we would be on TV, he would usually show up and sing with us. I remember Jimmy Kimmel, and I forget who else, but yeah, he would make it in and do a duet with her. Yeah, so he was yeah, liked him a lot.
One more person I wanted to ask about working with was you did a tour with Dylan, right?
Yeah, we did that a couple of times with Mavis and Dylan. Yeah.
Okay. I think I saw you guys then because I saw
Okay.
Mavis open for Dylan. Um, but like, so so it was you were with Mavis and you guys were
Yeah.
touring. Okay, okay. So you weren't backing Dylan.
No.
Okay, okay.
Um, One night, George Rosselli was really sick. He was his drummer, and he asked me if I would play that night if things got bad.
Yeah.
And and part of me was jumping up and down, and part of me was like, "Oh fuck no," because his book is it's not as that it's so hard, but he's just kind of all over the map with he doesn't do any songs in the similar way or anything anymore.
Hmm.
And so I told George yes that I would, and then luckily I didn't have to anyway. Um, but George was interesting though. He said, okay. He goes, I go, George, I could probably do this, but that book is not, that book is not so straightforward. He goes, I know. He goes, look, what you do is when they start the song, you just play the bass drum and you get your bass drum going, and then build from there. And it was so funny because this is a method that I had taught myself, because when I would go in and do a session, especially with this one artist, if I started accompanying them with the top part of the drum set, it always ended up, it seemed like I was a little bit ahead of them for some reason. So I would start just getting the bass drum, and it might have been the way the sound was being recorded in the room a little bit, weird acoustics, but still, I think I was just somehow reading things differently. But when you put that earth sound in first, that bass drum first, because really everything does build off of the bass drum, because the bass drum is the closest thing to the quarter note that you're probably going to get in a drum part, which is, the note that you count when you count the band off. So that was like total, like God, kind of like one of those epiphany moments. It's like, you figured this out. Now this professional is telling you, if you're going to sit in or play drums for Bob Dylan, to do what you told yourself already, play the bass drum first. Don't try to play everything before you get the bass drum happening. Yeah. And so I know, crazy, huh?
Wow. Yeah.
I know.
That's so cool. Well, it's also like it kind of goes to show you like that thing you learn from the beginning, and you really, the beginner's mind always kind of comes back in a way. That's so cool.
The basics are
Yeah.
always, if you don't really have your basics in there as professional, you're not going to sound, worthwhile. So, a little brief, moment of silence and respect for the basics is always prudent. We can all benefit. I mean, to this day, I just counsel myself, listen to the bass drum. Is this lining up with it? Because with my students, I found that one of the hardest things for people to do sometimes is to line that shit up with the bass drum. And if there's anything that's important, is to line it up with the bass drum before anything else. If you can play your bass drums on a nice steady quarter note, and then play your eighth note, your 1 and 2 and your 16th, if you're getting that stuff all lined up, then you have a chance. Because which drummers do we like best? We like the drummers who have a good, strong bass drum sound, and all of their other sounds are in accordance to that bass drum. They're in alliance, they're in rhythm, they're in harmony with the feeling of that bass drum. Whether it's Ringo or John Bonham or, Clyde Stubberfield with, James Brown, or any of it's all about, is that bass drum really hitting the earth? You rarely hear any popular bands that all of this shit doesn't line up and that bass drum doesn't hit right where it's supposed to hit, right? I mean, we're talking people's nervous systems here. Very seldom is somebody popular for ultimate quirky fighting against nature, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. When that bass drum and the snare fall in line like that, people's nervous systems they stand on end. They're like stand at attention. They're like, this shit is happening. That fucking, when the levee breaks, Led Zeppelin, or whatever, Super Bad by James Brown, when that shit is popping like that, everybody gets electric. Nobody can even not do it. You know what I'm saying? It's in the air and it's there. And so that's what all of us musicians should, should be striving for, or are striving for, And it's something, it's like, it's just something you got to keep telling yourself, reminding yourself. At least in my case, I do. I feel like, a lot of stuff comes, more from muscle memory and what have you, because we've been at it long enough. But like I said, I still really think it's important to check in on your basics every once in a while, even if you've been at it. I was born in 52, so I'll be 72 this year. So obviously I've spent some time playing music. It's just like by sheer calendar, So, but with some of the same problems, it's like it's like we're not machines. Some of the same things that I struggled with from the very beginning, I still struggle with now. Maybe just a little less, but you know what I'm saying? It's like you can't really separate the life and the emotional intelligence and mathematical intelligence, or all these different things. That it all has something to do with what we are musically. Obvious for me, like, going to play in a bar is like meditation. It's almost like I'm going somewhere to have a meal. It's like a food of a sort. It isn't because the money is good, because the money isn't really good, but being with the people and being able to go through this with them for like 4 hours and all of that is a really big deal. That's real food of a sort, so that's partly why we do this.
Yeah.
And some of it, sometimes we make money, sometimes we don't make money.
Well, and it seems like the stuff that challenges us and makes us want to keep doing it, it's usually stuff that isn't making us money, but
it can be.
It can be.
Yeah.
And I think what you said is very well said, and it's very, like, it's so interesting. We kind of started on that topic of what's going on inside of a student, and then, like, through the process of even all this, there's still that student, and that's that endless kind of like meditation practice that you slowly get better at, and like I think that's just beautifully said, and a beautiful way to cap this conversation.
Okay.
And Stephen, I really appreciate your time with this, man. I'm leaving super inspired. I've been looking forward to chatting with you for a bit, and so I'm leaving super inspired. So thank you so much, man.
Well, I really appreciate you for doing this, and send me all your information.
Listen to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.